They said she was finished the day she was thrown out, pregnant, jobless, and alone under the Anambra sun. But one rainy evening, while other traders ran and abandoned their goods, Jennifer stood in the storm, shielding her baby and her last hope with trembling hands. By morning, her stall was the only one still standing. What happened next shocked the entire market, and the man who once said she would never survive came back looking for her. Jennifer balanced the tiny mirror on the wall of the narrow corridor leading to her office. She adjusted her scarf carefully, tugging it lower, as though a strip of fabric could hide the swelling curve of her stomach. She was just 24, and this job as a hotel receptionist in Anambra was the closest thing she had ever had to stability. The glass doors, the constant hum of guests dragging their bags, the clicking of her heels on the tiled floor, these were her little treasures. But lately, Jennifer felt the manager's eyes lingering longer than usual. Every time she bent to pick up a file, every time she walked past the lobby, she felt exposed. She tried to convince herself she could hide it until delivery. She had planned to save enough money, get a small place, and raise her baby quietly. She rehearsed it in her mind daily. No one will know. I can still work. I can survive this. That Monday morning, the lobby was unusually quiet, the air-conditioned chill heavy against her skin. Then his voice came, sharp and cold. "Jennifer, step into my office. Now." Her palms turned clammy instantly. She smoothed her scarf once more, as if that small motion could erase the truth swelling inside her. The office door clicked shut behind her, and the smell of stale cigarettes made her stomach turn. The manager leaned back, his fingers drumming against the table. His eyes moved once, just once, down her belly. "You didn't tell us you were pregnant when you came here." Jennifer's heart stopped. Her lips trembled. "Sir, I can still work. I need this job. Please, just give me a chance." But he waved her words away like buzzing flies. His tone was final, his face stiff. "Guests don't want a swollen receptionist. It's bad for business. Clear your desk today. We don't need you anymore." The world tilted. Her legs carried her out of the office, but she felt like she was floating. The marble tiles beneath her feet blurred as she walked past the counter one last time. The whispers of coworkers, the click of the manager's pen, all of it became a haunting echo. Outside the hotel doors, Jennifer stood frozen in the sun, her hands clutching her scarf. One truth hit her harder than the manager's words. She was now jobless and completely alone. That evening, Jennifer sat on the floor of her small rented room. The single bulb overhead flickered weakly, throwing shadows across the cracked walls. Her mattress, thin and worn, lay shoved against the corner. In front of her sat a stainless steel plate with nothing but gari and water. She hadn't even touched it. Her eyes stayed fixed on the ceiling, her mind replaying the manager's words over and over. She tried to imagine what tomorrow would look like, but her mind refused to go beyond this night. Rent was due in 2 weeks. Without the hotel job, she had no money coming in. Without money, the landlord would show her no mercy. She knew him too well. The baby inside her shifted, a tiny flutter under her ribs. She placed her hand over her belly, her voice breaking. "What'll I do now? Where will we go?" Her tears came hot, spilling down her cheeks and soaking her scarf. But outside her door, life continued as though nothing had changed. Children laughed in the compound. A generator coughed to life. Someone pounded yam in the next room. The world did not pause for her pain. 2 weeks later, her fears became reality. The landlord arrived, his footsteps loud and impatient. A short, stout man with a permanently angry face. He didn't even bother with greetings. He stood at her door and barked, "Jennifer, it's time. Pay your rent or pack out." Her knees shook as she begged him, her voice trembling. "Please, sir, give me more time. I'll find something. I'll pay you, I promise." But he crossed his arms, unmoved. "This is not a charity. You're not the only one who needs a room." 2 days later, her belongings, a mattress, a plastic bucket, a few clothes, were tossed into the compound. Jennifer picked up her bundle of clothes, tied them into a wrapper, and carried them on her head. She didn't know where her legs were taking her. She only knew one thing. She no longer had a house. And with every step, that truth pressed against her chest like a stone. The city of Anambra was alive that evening, buzzing with relentless energy. Jennifer stood at the edge of the road. Her eyes darted from face to face, but no one looked at her. She was just another body in the crowd. She sank onto the pavement, her chest heaving. Around her, women arranged baskets of oranges, pawpaw, and bananas, their voices rising in chorus. Their laughter, their haggling, their chatter, it made her feel even smaller. Night fell quickly. The traders packed up, dragging their baskets away. Jennifer remained, alone with her bundle. Hunger gnawed at her stomach. When the last trader left, she dragged her bundle to a wooden bench near the market gate. She lay down slowly, her belly making every movement difficult. The mosquitoes arrived, buzzing and biting. She slapped at her skin, tears rolling silently down her face. She wanted to scream, but her voice stayed trapped in her chest. She hugged her bundle tightly, whispering to the child inside her, "Don't worry, I will find a way." But as dawn broke, painting the sky with streaks of orange, a thought struck her. She watched the fruit sellers arranging their baskets again, their hands moving with practiced rhythm. She had nothing, no job, no home, but maybe she could try what they were doing. The idea seemed impossible. Yet, deep inside, it was the first flicker of hope she had felt in weeks. The thought would not leave her. Selling fruits. It seemed small, almost laughable. She had studied computer science before dropping out when life collapsed. She had dreamed of working in an office, maybe even owning her own company one day. Now she was thinking of hawking bananas on the roadside. But hunger has a way of stripping pride. By afternoon, Jennifer sold her only valuable possession, a black handbag her cousin had given her years ago. It fetched her just enough to buy a small tray of oranges and bananas. She carried the fruits carefully, her heart racing. She chose a spot by the market entrance, squatted on the dusty ground, and arranged her fruits neatly. People walked past without stopping. Some glanced at her belly and frowned. Her throat went dry as minutes turned into an hour. Then, finally, a woman stopped. "How much for the bananas?" Her voice shook as she answered. The woman paid, and for the first time, Jennifer held money she had earned with her own hands since losing her job. It was only a few naira, but it felt like gold. By sunset, she had sold half of her fruits. She counted her small earnings under the dim streetlight, her heart lifting. It wasn't much, but it was something. Enough for water, maybe even bread. Enough to remind her that she could fight back. Days turned into weeks. The roadside became her new workplace. Each morning, Jennifer arranged her tray of fruits. Each night, she tied her earnings into the corner of her wrapper and held it against her belly as she slept on the market bench. It was not easy. The sun scorched her skin. Dust stung her eyes. Some drivers cursed at her for standing too close to their cars. One man even spat near her feet, muttering, "Who got you pregnant and left you to suffer?" The words pierced her like knives, but she forced her face into a blank mask. At times, she felt her strength slipping. She would sit on the roadside, clutching her belly, wondering if she had made a mistake. But then she looked at the coins in her hand. Small as they were, they meant survival. One evening, after a long day of insults and struggle, heavy rain pounded the city. The drains overflowed, turning the market streets into rushing rivers. Jennifer huddled under a broken umbrella, clutching her bundle tightly. Her tray of fruits slipped away in the flood, bobbing like lost dreams. She wanted to run after them, but the current was too strong. She sat frozen, soaked to the skin, her heart breaking with every orange that disappeared into the darkness. Then, a sharp pain ripped through her stomach. She gasped, clutching her belly. The baby. Too soon, too suddenly. Panic filled her. The rain, the pain, the dark. She screamed for help. Traders rushed to her side. Mom Ngozi's voice cut through the chaos. "Call Kiki. Quick!" In the rush of rain and thunder, They carried her into a tricycle, her cries piercing the night. At the hospital, under dim lights and with strangers holding her hand, Jennifer gave birth. A baby girl, small but alive. When they placed the child on her chest, the world shifted. All the pain, the rejection, the hunger, it all melted into one truth. She was a mother now, and this child was her reason. The weeks after delivery were the hardest. She returned to the roadside with her baby tied to her back, selling fruits. Customers sometimes pitted her, buying more than they needed. Slowly, her coins grew into small notes. She rented a tiny room near the market. It wasn't much, just cracked walls and a leaking roof, but it was hers. For the first time in months, she closed the door and felt safe. Every morning, she woke before sunrise. She strapped her daughter to her back and pushed her tray of fruits to the roadside. She shouted prices with new energy. The market women began to call her Jennifer the Fighter. Word spread. She became known for her honesty, her bright smile, and the way she never gave up no matter what. Customers returned, asking for her by name. She started buying fruits in larger quantities. Soon, she didn't need just a tray. She rented a small wooden stall. Her stall grew. She added watermelons, pineapples, even imported apples. The woman who once had nothing now had something. Not luxury, not wealth, but dignity. She built a life brick by brick, coin by coin. And every evening, when she counted her earnings, she looked at her daughter's tiny fingers and whispered, "We are going to be okay." The city of Anambra never stopped being harsh. But within its chaos, Jennifer carved out her space. She was no longer the abandoned receptionist, no longer the girl thrown out by her landlord. She was a mother, a fighter, a woman who built her life from dust and grit. Her story was no longer no husband, no house, no job. Her story was survival. And survival, in its purest form, was victory. Yet every night, she laid her child beside her on the thin mattress in the market shed and whispered, "We made it through today." And somehow, those words kept her going. Weeks rolled into months, and the city began to notice her persistence. She was no longer just the girl with the swollen belly. She became Jennifer the Fighter. The other traders respected her now. Mom Ngozi often slipped her a plate of food. A pepper seller once offered to hold the baby when Jennifer's hands were full. Small acts of kindness became lifelines. Customers started to remember her face, even asking, "Where's that girl who smiles even in the sun?" Her reputation was growing, but so was the target on her back. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. One morning, a man in a suit stopped at her stall. He bought apples and asked, "How much for all of them?" Jennifer's eyes widened. No one had ever cleared her tray in one purchase. She stammered out the price. The man paid without bargaining. As he walked away, she stared at the crisp notes in her hand. It was more than she usually made in 2 days. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine something beyond survival. What if I could rent a small stall instead of sitting on the ground? What if I could build something permanent? That night, she couldn't sleep. She counted her savings again and again, heart pounding. It was still not enough for rent, but closer than ever before. The dream of a wooden stall consumed her thoughts. No more scrambling for space on the dusty roadside. No more insults from drivers. A place that was hers. She could see it already, her name painted on a board above baskets of fresh fruits. It felt impossible, but so had surviving this far. The opportunity came sooner than she expected. A small wooden stall near the market became vacant after its owner relocated. The rent was modest compared to most places, but still far more than Jennifer had. She stood outside the stall, running her fingers along the rough wood, her baby asleep on her back. She could almost hear the sound of customers calling her name. She wanted it desperately. That evening, she told Mom Ngozi. The older woman listened quietly, then nodded. "If you're serious, I will help you with part of the rent. Pay me back slowly." Jennifer's eyes filled instantly. "Thank you. I promise I won't fail." Within a week, the stall was hers. Small, cracked, and barely standing, but it was shelter. It was identity. She scrubbed the floor, washed the walls, and arranged her fruits in neat baskets. On the first day, customers crowded curiously. Some smiled, impressed by her growth. Others whispered, but she didn't care. She stood tall behind her wooden counter, her daughter in a cloth cradle beside her. For the first time since losing everything, Jennifer felt something she hadn't dared to feel in months. Pride. The stall changed everything. With a roof over her head while she sold, Jennifer no longer feared the sudden rains or the scorching sun. Customers took her more seriously. Her baskets of oranges, bananas, and pineapples sat neatly arranged, catching the eyes of passers-by. But with visibility came pressure. Each morning, she woke before dawn, strapped her daughter to her back, and pushed a wheelbarrow of fruits to her stall. The work was brutal. Her hands blistered from lifting baskets. Her back ached from bending. At night, her bones throbbed with exhaustion. Still, she pushed through. Every sale meant diapers, food, and savings. And with every coin she dropped in her jar, her confidence grew. She was no longer just surviving. She was beginning to build. One day, a woman from another part of town stopped at her stall. "Your fruits look fresher than most. Do you also supply to shops?" The question startled Jennifer. She hadn't considered supplying in bulk. She smiled nervously. "Yes, ma, I can." It was a lie. She didn't yet have enough stock. But she said it with conviction. That single word, yes, planted a new seed in her mind. A bigger future was possible. But not everyone celebrated her progress. The same traders who once pitted her now muttered in envy. "Is it only her who customers buy from? Does she have charm?" One scoffed. Jennifer leaned into what made her different. Honesty, warmth, a smile that reached her eyes even when she was exhausted. When customers bargained, she treated them with respect, never raising her voice. If her fruit wasn't fresh, she told the truth and lowered the price. Slowly, word spread beyond the market. People told their friends, "Go to Jennifer's stall. She won't cheat you." Her reputation became her weapon. Even those who gossiped could not deny her stall was thriving. Customers returned not only for her fruits, but for her presence. For a kind word in a city that rarely offered kindness. One day, a man in a clean shirt and neat trousers stopped by. He introduced himself as Emeka, owner of a small restaurant nearby. "I hear you are reliable. Can you supply me with fruits every week?" Jennifer's heart raced. This was more than survival, it was opportunity. She smiled and said, "Yes, sir, I can." That week, she delivered her first bulk order. The payment felt heavy in her hand, a sign that her life was shifting. But even as her business grew, shadows lingered. She heard whispers of resentment from traders. She saw the way some turned their backs when she greeted them. Success, she realized, came with its own kind of loneliness. One evening, after a long day, Jennifer closed her stall and carried her daughter home. She reached her small room, collapsed on her mattress, and let exhaustion wash over her. As her daughter slept, Jennifer allowed herself to remember. The hotel lobby, the manager's cold voice, the landlord throwing her belongings into the dust, the rain that almost swept her life away. She shivered, tears spilling silently. But when she looked at her child, now plump with health, something inside her steadied. She whispered, "We've come far, and we're not done yet." Her mind returned to the restaurant order. If she could get one, she could get more. What if she became the go-to fruit supplier for hotels and eateries in town? The thought both thrilled and terrified her. She rose from the mattress, lit the small lantern, and pulled out her notebook. With a borrowed pen, she began scribbling costs, profits, goals. She planned late into the night, determination sharpening every line she wrote. Jennifer was no longer the girl who begged for rent, nor the frightened mother in the rain. She was becoming something else. A businesswoman, a fighter, a dreamer who refused to stay down. And yet, deep in her chest, a fear lingered. Success could vanish as quickly as it came. Morning light spilled over the market as Jennifer pushed her wheelbarrow, determination carved into her steps. She was tired, yes, but she was also sharper now. Every fruit had a count. Every customer mattered. Soon, her small stall became too small. With the restaurant order growing and new customers asking for bulk supplies, she had to rent space in a nearby storage shed. It wasn't glamorous, just cracked walls and a tin roof, but it kept her fruits fresher and safe from thieves. Her daughter, now toddling around with curious eyes, often sat on a stool by the stall, watching her mother with admiration. Traders teased gently, calling the child Madam Manager. For Jennifer, those little laughs felt like proof she was building something worth passing on. But success came with new problems. Suppliers from Onitsha began demanding higher prices, eating into her profits. Transport costs rose. Once, a supplier tried to shortchange her, assuming she was naive. Jennifer looked him straight in the eye and said firmly, "Count them again. I know my numbers." The old Jennifer would have been too afraid to speak up. This Jennifer refused to be cheated. One afternoon, while arranging pawpaws, Jennifer noticed a familiar figure. The hotel manager, the same man who had fired her months ago. He didn't recognize her at first, but when she handed him change, his eyes narrowed. "You," he muttered. His gaze flicked from her face to the bustling stall behind her. Customers waited in line. A child tugged at her wrapper. She looked nothing like the desperate girl he had dismissed. "Yes," she said calmly, meeting his stare. "It's me." For a moment, he stood frozen, words caught in his throat. Then, without another word, he walked away. Jennifer's hands trembled as she picked up the next fruit. The humiliation of that day flashed back, the office, his cold tone, the way he made her feel small. But now, he was the one speechless. That night, lying beside her daughter, Jennifer whispered, "We are no longer at the mercy of anyone." The taste of justice was subtle, but it was enough. Still, the road was far from smooth. A rival trader, bitter about losing customers, began spreading lies. "Her fruits are not fresh. She cheats people." For weeks, Jennifer noticed fewer customers stopping by. Panic clawed at her chest. She couldn't let her business collapse now. Instead of retaliating, she doubled down on quality. She woke earlier, traveled farther for the freshest fruits, and made sure her baskets looked irresistible. Slowly, customers returned. Some even told her, "They said things about you, but we know the truth." The lies fizzled out, but the experience taught her a lesson. Success would always attract enemies. If she wanted to keep rising, she needed more than hard work. She needed strategy. With her savings, she bought a small signboard, "Jennifer's Fresh Fruits." The bold letters stood proudly above her stall. For the first time, her name was tied to something permanent, something that couldn't be erased by rumors. Her daughter clapped when she saw it, shouting, "Mama's shop." And in that laughter, Jennifer felt her heart swell with victory. Years later, the stall had grown into a thriving fruit business. Jennifer managed deliveries to restaurants, hotels, and even schools. She still worked long hours, but her life was no longer about survival. It was about progress. One evening, she remembered the nights of hunger, the bench by the market, the rain that nearly broke her. Her story had begun with loss. No husband, no house, no job. But she had rebuilt herself, brick by brick, coin by coin, until her name stood for resilience. As she locked up her stall that night, her daughter tugged her hand and asked, "Mama, are we rich now?" Jennifer smiled, her eyes glistening. Not rich in money, but rich in strength, rich in love, and that's enough. For her, survival was not just victory, it was legacy. Jennifer didn't just survive. She rewrote her destiny with nothing but courage, consistency, and a mother's stubborn hope. She had no husband, no house, no job. Yet she built a future with her bare hands. So here's the question. If everything you leaned on disappeared today, would you rise? Or would you give up? Share this story with someone who needs strength right now. Subscribe for more real-life stories that remind us what resilience truly looks like.